welcome to the stream. Sorry for the late start today. I totally forgot the stream was supposed to already have started, but we are getting started now. Okay. Hey, notify the Discord. Stream. Okay, sorry, I had to update some stuff. So anyway, how this is going to work is I know a few things that you guys are struggling with on the challenge. And so I'm going to show some of my methods, as well as if you want to submit your work to be reviewed live on stream, I can break it down. I'll try to be as fair as possible since I am going to be one of the judges. I don't want to like give somebody too much feedback, you know. I'll try to be as objective as possible, so we're mostly going to be talking about the technical aspects, not the creative. So just so you guys know, because I want to level the playing field, I don't want to give, you know, too much feedback on the creative, because I want you guys to come with that, since that's a big part of this challenge. Abstract late, I know I'm super late. Here, let me ping the Discord streams. And I'm live now, going over feedback and tips for the challenge. There we go. But yeah, so anyway, let's go ahead and get started. I also abstract my Spotify premium finally went away, so I can finally join the YouTube race. What was that notification? Oh, somebody subscribed. Thanks for the sub. Welcome. Okay, anyway, let's go ahead and get started. And let's see, I gotta download the footage. I guess I could start. I'm gonna be doing the 4K footage. There we go. And then I'll make a new folder here. What are you doing? Challenge 1. Okay, so anyway, one of the first things that you guys were really struggling with was camera tracking. And I've done this shot before. And so I know a few tricks for this shot, camera tracking wise. So I'll try to walk you through the Blender version and the Synthesize way to do things. So VFX motion tracking. Let's open up our footage. How is everybody doing today? No, it's a Saturday. Everybody trying to relax. Finally got some time to do some streams. I haven't done a stream in a while, so I apologize. It's been hectic. Oh geez. Let me go ahead and do this. I think we have to set it to this or something. I can't remember exactly. I set it to linear. I always get the mix up. Okay, anyway, this is just color management. You guys set it up to your, I actually use Aces now, and so might be a little bit different for you, but if you're using standard Blender, just use the standard view transform. Or just do Blender. So anyway, camera tracking. I have my own method that I have kind of used for a while now, and it pretty much works with most scenes now. And a lot of people don't love using this method, and I don't know why, because I've used it so much that it's just like, it's so nice. I don't know. So anyway, we have the scene loaded in Blender. Let's go ahead and set scene frames and prefetch. What FPS? You don't need to. I think it said it in the title, 25. So yeah, you want to make sure you try to match as much as possible the frame rate. You can also convert this to a image sequence as well. And so yeah. Also, if you guys are wanting to submit your own footage for review of this challenge, you guys can go to the Discord. Link is in the description to join the Discord, and then in the challenge section we have the feedback stream channel, so you can post your work, either a link or like a video or something like that there. So loving the stream as always. Keep doing your magic with blenders. Thanks, Super Rad Max. Welcome back to the stream. Thank you. Are you participating in the challenge? I gotta get some people on. Okay, anyway, so camera tracking in Blender. All we have to do, it's super easy, this method. This is like a, Ian Hubert teaches this method a little bit, but I have some twist on it myself. So first of all, pattern size and search size, you can always test that control clicking the marker and then Alt S to reveal the search area. You can see by default, they're super small. This is a little bit too small for a 4K scene. The default values are kind of set up for 1080p, but for 4K, since 4K is double the width and the height, you have to multiply this by 2. So we'll just multiply this. So 42 and then 142, and then that gives us this. This is kind of the size that you're looking for a scene like this. You know, this is a little bit too small. It also depends on the trackers, but for this method, I kind of just brute force it. Basically, the explanation of this method is that we're trying to throw as many tracking markers at the scene as possible, and then since we have like hundreds of tracking markers, we can whittle it down and get out the bad ones and stuff. It just gives Blender a lot more data. It is a little bit more intensive for a computer, but I actually find Blender is pretty good at you know, the data and all that stuff nowadays. So anyway, let's see. Yeah, it looks like our frames aren't pre-caching. So if you have this issue, what you could do, you can see the blue bar isn't caching everything. What you can do is come to Edit, Preferences, go down to System, and we have this video sequencer. This is a memory cache limit. This is in megabytes or whatever. So basically right now, this number by default is set to 8 gigs of RAM, not VRAM, just RAM. So I have 64. I can multiply this by 2. So we have 16 gigs. So there we go. It basically just, you know, how many gigs do you want in the actual video sequencer? And so that's what this is. Basically this and some other stuff is the video sequencer inside of Blender. So let's go ahead and prefetch again. Now you can see it loads the entire footage. So just a quick tip there. If you are struggling to place something and you have a little bit more RAM, you know, I recommend, if you're building your machine, getting 32 out of the gate. I think that'll help a lot. Also real quick, let's go ahead and set the resolution. I don't know if it matters in this step, but you know, might as well. I think it's just 4K. We can double check that. I think the file name, yeah. The file name is nice because it has the resolution and the frame rate inside of the name itself. But yeah, you just want to make sure you kind of set that stuff up over there. Anyways, let's go ahead and track. So now that we have the pattern size and search size, how are we going to actually track? First of all, always do match previous frame. That just works better, I found. Always turn on normalize. Normalize is just if there's any luminance changes, so like a flicker, if there's like exposure changes, stuff like that. It'll try to not to make the markers jump around at those situations, like a lightning flash or something like that, right? It'll try to disregard that as much as possible. Now, motion model. This is where a lot of people, I think, get lost a little bit, is because a lot of people teach the perspective and affine methods. I'm not a huge fan of them personally. I just find they're a little bit finicky because they jump around. Blender isn't that great, in my opinion, at the perspective and affine. I just find it, you know, again, jumps around a little bit too much. For me, I really just stick to these bottom 3, bottom 4. Sometimes I do need all 3 of these, but most of the times I'll stick with location. Location, if you don't know, is just 2D tracking on the scene, right? In this scene, you can make the argument for rotation and scale because the camera is rotating in and we are pushing in, but I don't think we're going to run into too many issues with this method. But anyway, so location is pretty much the only thing I use. The reason being, again, is because it's 2D tracking our scene with the markers and stuff like that. Personally, I just feel that gives me so much more accuracy into the pinpoint, precision that we need for these tracking markers and stuff. And so if you are struggling with perspective and affine, just know for a scene, especially like this, I just, Blender's algorithms are fine. I don't think they're great, so I recommend just sticking with location for the most part. That's just my personal experience and what I've noticed. But yeah. So anyways, next, the only other final thing I do is tracking settings extra. I'll set the correlation to like a 0.9. This is just basically, I always say this in all my tutorials. It basically just means that Blender has to be like 90% sure that the tracker is correct frame to frame, right? So like, say we have this little like dot here, right? And then the next frame over, it like jumps over here, right? That would basically stop this marker here because it's jumped too far and it's like, it's not even close. And so this number would be probably like 0.1, 10%. Sure that this is correct, right? And so we're just getting out we're just getting out bad markers, because we don't want things to jump around and stuff. Space Hunter, good evening. I was waiting for this stream. Don't know what to do in regards to your challenge. I got the track down, but now I'm lost. Don't worry. What do you have so far? Do you have any CG in the scene or anything like that? I would love to see it. Of course, if any of you guys want to join in the stream, or if you want to post your feedback and you want to receive feedback, join our Discord. Link is down below in the description. Would love to see some of you guys there. Introduce yourself. We have some resources and stuff like that to help you on your journey. So anyway, and if you do need feedback, by the way, we have the community challenge tab and we have the feedback stream up at the top. So if you need anything over there. But anyway. So camera tracking now. So we have all of these settings over here explained. Hopefully that makes a little bit more sense for you guys. These are pretty much all the settings I mainly do at the start. If something is wonky, I'll come back to here and change some things, but let's go ahead and get tracking now. So there are many ways to track. You can hold control and get pinpoint accuracy if you want to do manually. I don't like doing manual stuff. Let's do detect features. That'll kind of make Blender automatically do some stuff. So it's trying to find like areas of high contrast and like areas it thinks that it's going to have some good camera tracking markers. In this little menu down here, this detect features menu, I know it might be a little bit hard to see for you guys, but the margin is the border around the frame that it's gonna like cut off markers, right? So they don't slide along the frame. Most times I just leave that to the default value unless like something's happening to where I do want to do that, but most times I just leave it on 16. The threshold is what we want to change down. I want to do a 0.01. The threshold is basically the number where it's trying to select the how good of tracking markers it's trying to manually detect. Basically setting it all the way down to 0.01. It's basically saying, hey, if you're a little bit sure that this tracker is going to be good, go ahead and do it. Let's just go ahead and get everything into the scene. Now this distance number is the distance between these tracking markers. So right now it's like 120. So it won't select, it'll find one tracking marker and then it'll have a 120 pixel radius around that marker, and it won't have any other markers around that area. It's just a way to avoid duplication and stuff like that. Right now it's 120. I like to set this low for like 4K. I'll maybe do like an 80 and stuff like that. And as you can see, we have a lot more data into the scene. So that's pretty much all I do over here. And so I'll exit out of that. But yeah, now we have the camera tracking markers. Of course, we do need a track. So you can press this button. The shortcut is Control T to have those track forward. Already you can see they're going throughout the shot and everything is looking good. Let's see. Space Hunter just blocked out the environment. I'll try to go for something simple, I guess. Yeah. No, I mean, we still have a lot of time. We have a little counter down here, so if you ever need a reference how many days and hours you have left, you can always check this right down here. But anyway, so as you can see, we have tracked and some markers made it all the way through. Now Blender only needs 8 markers for the camera track to be actually have a solve. 8 markers in my opinion is way too little. 8 markers is not going to give you a lot of data unless they are really solid markers. And especially for a scene like this where we're like, there's a huge like, you know, camera movement and stuff like that. This is not going to be enough, especially at this point, because all these markers are kind of in the same area and stuff like that on the screen and kind of the same distance away from camera. So up until here, I think the camera track is going to be perfect. But once we get into like this area, I think the camera track is going to be a little wonky and stuff. So what we need to do is we need to go ahead and have many different tracks going throughout the entire footage. So this is our first batch. What I usually do, no matter what footage I do, I always have one going from frame 1 to the end, and then I like to have a batch going from the last frame to the beginning. So 4:43 is the end of our footage. Let's go ahead and detect some more features right here. As you can see, there's a ton of features. Don't worry, this will track pretty fast. Again, our pattern size and search size are relatively low, and so it's actually going to be pretty fast even on slower machines, I believe. And if you're on 1080p footage, it's going to be even faster. So anyway, we'll go ahead, and the shortcut for this is Control-Shift-T, or there's this little arrow icon as well down here. So Control-Shift-T, and that'll track everything backwards. And so now we have, as you can see, a lot more data that's tracking in this kind of corridor section and stuff. You can also see on the graph down here, everybody always kind of asks me what this graph section is down here. And it's basically just a representation of the X and Y values in the 2D space for these tracking markers, right? So these tracking markers, X is red and green is Y. And so the X axis is going long ways, and then the Y axis is going up and down. And so it's just 2D translation data, because that's all camera tracking is at the end of the day, is just 2D camera tracking, or sorry, 2D markers. And then their relationship to each other with parallax and all that stuff actually makes the 3D data into the scene and stuff. So as you can see, we have tracked these, and so it does get a little tight up here. It looks like they are continued tracking back here. So what I'm going to do is we'll say around this area, right? So this area is where I would assume the markers are pretty, you know, still tracked decently and stuff. But once we get here, they kind of all compound on each other and stuff, and we can lead to a little bit of glitches and stuff. So what I'll do is like, we'll say like 250, or we'll do a little bit less. We'll say 225. And the reason I'm picking that number is because I still see we have some decent tracking markers here and in this outside. So we're not going to lose any data if we stop these markers before this frame. So anyway, at 225, with all these still selected, we can come down here, and there's this little clear track path, and then there are arrows. So you can either clear it forward or backwards. In our case, we want to clear it backwards. So it's just this little button here. We'll clear that. And now all of these markers stop at this frame. So yeah, so that is pretty simple. Now, this seems to be enough tracking markers throughout the entire footage. You just want to have as much as you can get away with. We might, just for, you know, demonstration purposes, at this frame, we'll go to like the middle of the footage. So around like 210, maybe for me. I'll notice that we have a lot more data here that we could use, maybe some on the wall here and here. So I'll do one more set. And so we'll detect features again. It'll do all this data. So now remember this 210 number. We need a Control-T to track that forward. And then once that's done, we'll come back to 210 right here, and then Control-Shift-T to track that backwards. So now the idea is we basically have 3 sets of tracking markers, one at the beginning, one at the end, and then one at the middle. And so this will give us a lot of data to actually go ahead and get out with Blender and stuff like that. So anyways, hopefully that makes a little bit more sense. It's never kind of a one batch method. You're always trying to get as many as possible. You can see also, if you're having a lot of confusion, all these red markers and stuff, that's just tracking markers that are lost. We can hit Alt-D actually to remove them, so you can only see the active markers. So anyway, as you can see, this is what's going on. And so yes, throughout the entire footage, now we have many different tracking markers to actually track in our scene. So yeah, that is the method. Hopefully that makes a little bit more sense of my method of like why we're throwing so much at the scene. So now Blender has all this data. So yeah, after I do that, now is the manual method where I go out and before I get my first solve, I want to get out all the bad trackers as possible. So bad trackers, so you can see 2 things. So in this graph section, we have some markers that have these big spikes here and there. You want to see the spikes in the green and the red, not just one or the other, because again, green is Y, red is X, and so if they are spiking in either one of those, it's going to be jumping around, right? So anyway, you can see this marker over here. We can visually see it up here as well. These frames, it's fine, but then at the very end, it kind of like jumps out. Now, there are two methods to get this out. The method I showed before, where we can go to a place where I think it's decent, it's fine there. Then we can press this X to clear path after, and now that little jump is out. So you can do that. For a case like this, where we have so many markers in the scene, and especially so many markers over here as well, I'm just going to go ahead and delete it. So we'll just delete the bad markers. So we'll delete this one. It looks like there are some jumps here, and you have to really zoom in for some of these. So there's a big wide jump there, and then some at the bottom as well. So just any kind of outliers or any kind of like pops or anything like that, that's really what you're looking for. And since we have so many markers, I'm just going to go ahead and delete all the ones that are kind of, going all over the place. Seems like some of these are fine. See, this one might be jumping. That one looks fine, actually. But yeah, so that is a nice manual method. You can even see in here, we have a little bit of spike in here. You don't have to get out all of them, but as much as you can, I think is kind of the goal. Get out of the Mentos ad, sponsored by Mentos. But yeah, so anyway, we now have a good kind of manual pass over it. You can of course go throughout your footage and see if any jump around visually to you. For this scene, to my eye, I'm not seeing any, and honestly, if there is like a little one, I'm sure Blender could get that out. So anyway, we'll come and go over here. We do need to go ahead and solve our camera now. Now there are many methods to the solve tab. The A and B keyframe, I think of it as the area where there's the most amount of parallax. So for me, I would maybe starting at 230, because we have all of these markers in the scene, and then we'll go to like 300. I usually like to leave like at least 50 gap, 50 frame gap. The smaller you do, the less accurate I think the final track is. But this is a number we can always play around with at the end. So now basically 230 to 300, or I'm at 300. I don't know. There we go. 230 to 300, we have a lot of parallax. You can see we have a lot of markers in the foreground, and then we also have a lot of markers in the background. That's going to give us a lot of data to work with. So that's how I'm just picking that range. The other method that people sometimes like to use is keyframe. Keyframe will have Blender go ahead and automatically pick it for you. I'm not a huge fan of keyframe, if I'm being honest. I find sometimes it picks a very small range, and then also it picks a kind of not my favorite range and stuff. And just so you know, the range, the A and B keyframe range, that is the range that it's going to tell you what your solve area is. And so if you pick a better range for the A and B keyframe, you're going to get a better solve error, not a better number, but a more accurate solve error, if that makes sense. But yeah, so that is that explained, just area of a lot of parallax and stuff like that. The refine section, if you know some of these numbers like the focal length, optical center, radial distortion from your camera and lens, you can actually come over here and go to track camera, the sensor. You can put that in. You can put the focal length information, the K1, K2, K3, optical center. All that stuff is like really big leagues. If you're like really the only one that sometimes if I'm shooting my own footage I'll try to record is the focal length, right? Because that will help with the actual recording process and stuff like that. But since we downloaded this footage online, we don't know any of this information. Sometimes you'll get some of this information online, like Action VFX has some pretty good information it gives you for some of these numbers, but for our purposes we're just going to let Blender try to guesstimate what it thinks it is. So we have focal length, optical center, radial distortion right there. So anyways, we're just going to refine all those, and we are pretty much done with the solve tab. We can go ahead and solve the camera motion. Once we click that, it'll go ahead and load it in. This is a huge clip, 443. With the challenge and the rules, if you guys go back to the rules, you only need 5 seconds minimum. And so it's a 13, I think like 17-second clip total. But if you want to cut it down, say you have a lower end hardware or you want lower render times and stuff, 5 seconds is the minimum. I'm not counting anybody who does the entire clip extra. That is the idea there. But anyways, now that we have our first solve, we see we have our solve error is a 2.7 pixels. What that means is basically the 2.7 pixels. we can say it's just 3 pixels. The center of this marker, how much does that deviate throughout the footage? And this is a average number of all the markers in the scene. So if I actually come up to clip display and then go to info, you can see if you click a marker, you can actually see its average error for that specific marker, right? So this is a little bit lower than our average up here. So that means there are some errors that are higher than this number, bringing that number up. So now what we need to do is we need to get out all of those high error trackers and leave the low error trackers. And so that way the law of averages will get this solve number lower and lower every single time. So the very, very important thing I want you to know for this step is you don't want to do it all at once. I find too many people will go ahead, come to the cleanup section, clean tracks. They'll open this menu down here, and then reprojection error, they'll just set this all the way up to like something like this. They're like, oh, I don't want lower than like a 1 pixel solve error, right? They'll do this, they'll delete everything, and now look how much you have deleted. It's a kind of step-by-step process, right? Each time you do this, the camera will resolve all the tracking markers, and what you'll find is the more bad markers you get out, the more accurate the tracking markers are actually going to become, because it whittles down some of the outliers. And so it's just, you don't want to do it all at once, basically, is what I'm trying to say. Also, real quickly, before we get into the cleanup process, I do want to make mention of this little blue line that's down here in the graph now. This is the solve error line. So as you can see, it's kind of jumping all over the place right now. You can see there's a major jump right here and stuff like that. That basically means that since this solve error is an average of all the camera tracking markers across all of the frames, right? It's relatively smooth right here. Like, this is a good tracking spot, but as soon as we get to this area, it spikes up, right? And so that basically means if you actually have this a good solve error and stuff like that, but there are spikes, then you're really going to notice that in the camera track. So your camera track error might be good, but the track itself is not. So just keeping that in mind, we want this blue line to be as flat as possible, and also this solve error to be as low as possible. So hopefully that makes sense, because certain people don't use the graph section properly, in my opinion, and it's actually a really powerful tool to be able to tell how accurate your track is, besides just seeing it manually up here. This is kind of like the foolproof way. If it's not flat down here, it's not a good track, versus like some people will just do like some test up here and see some stuff there. Anyway, we'll come over here and clean tracks again. That is how we clean out some of these tracks. I'm going to put the reprojection error all the way up until we're only selecting like the top 10% of the tracking markers. So for me, that's like a 4.9 over here. You can see we have all these tracking markers selected. This is basically 10% of the total markers we have selected. I'm going to go ahead and hit X and delete these selected tracking markers. So now we have pretty much all the bad ones out, the super bad ones, right? Those were basically above 5 pixel solve error, and so that's bringing this number way up. And so now that we have some of those out, we can come over here and we'll go ahead and solve the camera motion again. You do have to solve it every single time because it won't automatically update until you resolve it. So as we can see, just give it a little bit. It's refining right now. It'll also, every single time we do this, it'll get our focal length and optical center and radial distortion closer and closer to what it's actually going to be. So anyway, as you can see, we pretty much halved our solve error right now. And for 4K, 1.34 is actually pretty decent. I'm just going to go ahead and do a little bit more. This is also part of the process where you want to go through your footage and make sure there's no like areas where, you know, maybe a lot of markers were that it got deleted and stuff like that. Also, if I kind of inspect my blue line down here, we still do have a little bit of spikes here and there, especially like when these markers come on and stuff like that. You can see we're having a major spike here. So I want to try to eliminate some of these if we can. But anyway, we'll go ahead and do another clean tracks process. We'll go and bump the reprojection error up. Again, top 10% of tracks. You can see this is the area that we're selecting now. We're going to go ahead and hit delete and delete the tracks. We'll go ahead and resolve. And you're just going to do this many times. Now, how many? That's really up to you and your tracking scene and stuff like that. What you're looking for to know when you've pushed too far is if you start getting too few tracking markers in the scene. Again, Blender only needs 8, but I would suggest having at least 30 or 50 in it personally using this method. As you can see, we have a ton on screen still, so I know we're still good enough to go ahead and get this lower. And I just want to point out that our blue line is reading a lot flatter. You can see it's super flat now. There is still like a little bit of a jump here, right? That's when our markers come on and stuff like that. So I think we can do one final cleanup and we'll maybe push this a little bit harder. So push like something like this maybe. And that's just selecting again all kind of like the tracking markers throughout the clip. So we'll go ahead and X, delete the tracking markers, and solve our camera motion again. And again, we have a ton of markers on frame. I'm not afraid that we're pushing it too hard. This scene is relatively easy to track, and so that's why I picked it for this challenge. But anyway, as you can see, this is kind of the thing I'm talking about. Once I kind of reach this many tracking markers, I'm going to try putting on the brakes a little bit. You can maybe push it a little bit more than this. But as you can see, as we go to like certain parts of the clip, we're losing tracking markers that go out of frame and stuff like that. So I think I'm comfortable of calling it here. We have a 0.76 solve error. You got to remember this is to do with your resolution, right? So my rule of thumb is like anything below a 1 pixel solve error at 4K resolution is very ideal. And then anything below like a 0.3 or 0.2 pixel solver is ideal for 1080p, and so that's usually what I'll try to hit. Again, this is meaningless if this is the blue line down here is all over the place, but this blue line looks relatively flat, and so I think we are good to go ahead and get our solve out onto the big screen. So anyway, now that we have this, we can go ahead and set up the scene. So set up background, set up tracking scene. This is just a scene setup down here. If I come up here, you can see a couple things. First of all of our points are kind of small on the frame. And then also our floor is not set up correctly. If I go into the view and then I can actually come up here and go to motion tracking and put the size down just so we can see this a little bit more, all of our tracking points. You can see our ground plane of the footage is right here. I can also bring this down. I don't need to see the graph anymore. The footage, if I come over here and make it a little bit more opaque, you can see the actual footage. Ground plane is here, but the ground plane of our scene is kind of floating in midair. So we do need to go ahead and match that. It's super simple for this scene. We have a lot of points. Now, depending on where you want to put your CGI, that's the ground plane that you want to put. Since most people are probably going to be putting their CGI inside of this moment, you know, towards the end and stuff, I'll put my ground plane over here. So ground plane super easy inside of Blender. All you need to do is select 3 points that are on the ground. So right over here, we'll put the orientation to floor, and there you go. Now we have the proper floor defined in our scene. We can even go a little bit further, and I'll define the origin point. So this is a nice center point of our scene. So I'll go ahead and click that, set the origin right there. And then furthermore, if you want to define like a axis, right? So like this right here would be a good x-axis, but because it's basically in line rotationally with this axis. So I'll define the x-axis. You can also do the y-axis depending on what you want to do. And then finally, what we need to do most importantly, I would say, is set up the proper scale in your scene. If we come out here to the 3D viewport, you can see we have this cube. If I actually go ahead and Z and then move it up 1 unit, so just type in 1, you can see this is basically 2 meters tall in our scene. If we go back into the camera view, you can see that 2 meters is a little bit, I think, too big, you know? I think it's reading more like 10 meters or something like that for now. Let's go ahead and move it back a little bit. Or actually, we don't need to do that. We can come into the camera view, and what we can do is let's select 2 points. Now, this is another thing. If you're actually filming your own footage, you can have 2 points, and if you take measurements on the day, if you ever hear of like a data wrangler for, you know, in film, they will actually take some measurements of the actual set to have more accurate readings. But anyway, we'll take these 2 points that we have, and then we'll go ahead and set the scale. That is this button over here. We'll set scale, and the idea here is we're just going to move this number up until we feel like this cube is basically 2 meters tall. So 2 meters for my sake is basically a very tall person. You can think of it as like a 6.5 foot person. But yeah, so a person who's walking by would probably be like this big, I would guess. You know, you can move him around the scene to see, but yeah, I think he'd be roughly that tall. I think that's a pretty good measurement. Again, since we downloaded this footage online, they didn't provide any of this information for us. We're just guesstimating at this point, but that reads roughly 2 meters to me, and so we can lock it in there. But yeah, anyways, that is pretty much it for the camera tracking. We have the scene set up, we have the rotation set up. If the rotation's not perfect for you, sometimes what I'll do is I'll hide this. I'll find like a good line on the ground. So like there's this kind of thing over here, and I want to go ahead and try to align our plane here, and as you can see, it's like falling off over here, and then it's not perfectly rotated here. So what you could do is you can select the camera, and then if you hit R and then Z, you can actually rotate it, and it's rotating around the actual camera's point of view right now, right? The camera's origin point and stuff. Instead of rotating around the camera's origin point, what we could do is set this from, if you transform the pivot point from median point, you can transform it to the 3D cursor. And since our 3D cursor is in the world center, you can also double check that by, what is it? Control A. No, sorry, Control Shift S, go to cursor to world origin just to double check, right? But it should be in the world origin if you haven't messed around with anything. Then we can R, Z, and then rotate that around. And since we're selecting the camera and not the world, it's actually rotating and keeping the plane in view. But now we're getting more accurate rotation. And so I'll zoom in a little bit, R, Z. Something like that is looking a little bit more rotated. Again, it's not like necessary, but it just helps model, you know. So now you can model this a little bit more accurately. Like I'll put the wall more inside of here. I'll G, Y, move this back here, and now you can see we can start to build out the scene, and it's more accurate than if we didn't do that, right? So it should be reading pretty well. Again, it's not the most accurate thing. I think the focal length is a little bit off, but we can play around with that and get a better focal length and stuff like that. One quick thing I do want to just walk through really quick is kind of how I would set up a scene from here. I would personally delete the background and foreground collections and also the light. Now the ground is automatically set to be a shadow catcher. So if you go into object properties down to visibility, we do need to be in cycles. So if we go back here in visibility, you should see is set to mask shadow catcher. So that's just what it's defaultly set to. So I just want to point that out. And then the cube is just a normal cube. So if we go to rendered view, also, let's go ahead and put on film transparency, just so we have transparency in our scene. You can see it's basically just catching the shadows, but it's transparent for everything else. So that is what shadow catcher does in our scene. Of course, I'm not going to be explaining lighting. I want you guys to figure out the lighting for your own scenes and stuff like that. But just know that's kind of the default scene and all the explanations there. Next, we can talk about the view layers. It goes ahead and sets up a foreground and background view layer. I'm not a huge fan of that. I don't know why they still have this. I find nobody really uses it. So we can go ahead and disable the background. If we're going to do any view layers and stuff like that, we want to have the control over that. I don't know why Blender automatically assumes that we're going to want a foreground and background view layer. It's kind of weird to me, if I'm being honest, but it is there if you need it, I guess. We'll go ahead and come back to compositing. And Blender just crashed. Amazing. Great explanation. Hop off. Are you learning amazing stuff, Abstract? So your next VFX tutorial or your next VFX client, you can actually do decent camera tracking, because I've seen your camera tracking before. But anyway. So we have this, again, I'm pretty sure everything kept, yeah. So in compositing now, it has all these nodes. Now, I'll try to explain these as much as possible. These two render layers node, because we just deleted the background view layer, that's what this node was. This was background. We're not going to need this anymore, so I'm going to go ahead and delete that in the alpha over. And then the scale and movie distortion nodes. So what both of these are, we have the movie and then we have our render layers. This is what we're going to be rendering, and we're basically combining that with an alpha over. This is standard kind of Blender compositing. What's going on up here is our lens distortion. Lens distortion is a huge thing for camera tracking that a lot of people don't take into account. It's very kind of finicky, but basically every single lens, even like the super high quality ones, is going to have a little bit of distortion. It's mostly pronounced around the kind of outside of the area, and that's to do because the outside area of like the sensor and stuff like that, that's the area that it's closer to the edges of the lens, right? So you're going to have more distortion because it needs to focus all the light into one kind of, thing for the sensor. It's very confusing, but all you need to know is towards the edges of the actual frame is where you'll get the most distortion. Usually, since most sensors are square or, APS-C, you'll mostly see it around these edges and these edges. Some some sensors it'll be like around down at the bottom and the top as well, but most of the times it's going to be really pronounced around these edges, especially if you have a super wide angle lens. It's going to be a lot of distortion. So it's very, very important, because if you don't add the lens distortion back in, you're going to have your CGI looking like it's sliding around and actually being not tracked into the scene properly. So what we do, by default, Blender goes ahead and distorts the footage. You can actually see it kind of bows in the top and bottom. That is the lens distortion. For my processes, I never like to distort the footage itself. You want to try to maintain the footage distortion as much as possible. The biggest reason being is because when we do stuff like adding grain in, removing grain, doing any keying, stuff like that, you don't want to stretch pixels, right? And that's what this movie distortion is doing. Now, unfortunately, for the Blender method, you will have to distort inside of Blender, because as far as I know, there's no way to get some of this distortion data out and like render it out to nuke and stuff like that. I've actually had a tutorial in the past where I used to do like an ST map and render that out of Blender and stuff like that. That was a fine method and stuff like that, but the way to keep it as simple as possible for you guys is, instead of distorting the footage, we want to distort these, the CGI. So we take this movie distortion node, we'll bring this down here to the CGI. So now you can see, we'll go ahead and render out a CGI, just a quick image. So 240, and I'll put the sky up to white, just so we have like some shadows and stuff. Yeah, that's fine. So we have, I might make it, just to make it a little yellow. There we go, perfect. Getting too advanced into this. We'll let that render out a little bit. It's denoising. I didn't set GPU denoising. That's annoying. There we go. Okay, so as you can see, here's what we're getting right now. That's before I lose my sanity, let's turn on GPU denoising. And I can also half this. Okay, anyway, compositing. So as you can see right now, it's doing the wrong distortion. If we really zoom in, you can see it's distorting it. But the reason I know it's the wrong distortion is because right now it's set to undistort. It's a very backwards way of talking, but you have to think of lens distortion for the movie clip. We'll duplicate this up here, right? The lens is distorting the image for the native footage, right? So there is lens distortion here. In order to remove the distortion from the lens, we have to undistort it. But to our eye here, it looks distorted. But technically, like if we look over here, these lines are straighter versus if this was off, these lines are more curved at the edges and stuff like that. But when we undistort it, we are making the distortion less. And so it's just a very backwards way of saying things. Basically, all we need to know, since we're not distorting the footage, we're distorting the CGI. Instead of undistorting it, we need to redistort it. So we're going to change it from undistort to distort. And then now that's the proper distortion. And so this would be more accurate if I was to render this out and stuff like that, which I might post it on the Discord just to help with you guys and stuff like that. By the way, if you are watching and you need feedback on your challenge or anything like that, we have in the Discord, we had the feedback stream section. If you want to post any of your work, I'd love to see what you guys are cooking up. But yeah, anyway, that hopefully explains Blender's method of lens distortion a little bit better. You can have this scale here. If you've set up the resolution properly, you don't need either of these nodes. The scale was pretty much only for the lens distortion node. So we can just go ahead and get that out of here and plug image into alpha over. And so yeah, so this is how I would set up if you're just doing all compositing and stuff inside of Blender. Is just set it up like this. The nice thing about why I love working in ACES is because this is exactly the color management that we're going to be using. So it makes ACES workflow so much easier. You could render this straight out of Blender and you'd be totally fine. The reason I wouldn't render out of Blender. The Blender compositor is a little bit finicky. It's actually come a long way, being pretty fast. You can come up here, performance device, you can change to GPU, and GPU is pretty fast now. You can see it's, you know, swapping things pretty fast. It used to load a long time and stuff. I highly recommend you guys learn a separate compositor like Nuke, DaVinci Resolve, Fusion, even After Effects and stuff like that if you really have to. But that would just increase your work so much. And so how you would do that, you can also, let's see, it's been so long since I've there's this convert pre-multiply. I'm pretty sure you want to have that unchecked, because if you pre-molt it, it looks like it's already pre-molted. Let's see, there's like a that I can't remember. I don't know. I'm pretty sure natively inside of Blender, the render layers image socket is already pre-molted. So I don't think you have to multiply it again. It just looks weird. It has this like black border around it if you don't. So I don't think you want to. Anyway, that gets a little bit more complicated into it. But this is the way you would set it up inside of Blender. If you want to render it out of the software and do like Nuke, this is how I would do it. So first of all, we can disable all this stuff up here, or you can delete it. The composite node we can unplug. The composite node still has to exist. This has been a glitch in Blender for a while. Is the composite node has to exist for this next part to work, but we want to add a file output node right here. And the file output node, you can see it's pretty similar to the composite node, but it has its own base path, and that's because this base path is separate from in the output section down here. This output section is only for the composite node. So if you're not using the composite node up here to render stuff, you do not need to set anything over here. So that's very important. A lot of people struggle with that. File output node, what I love about it, and honestly, hot take, I think the file output node should replace the composite node entirely. The composite node, in my opinion, with the file output node is redundant, and hopefully you'll see why. Let's come up to node, and then in properties, if you select this window, we have the new base path. So this is where you want to save it into whatever kind of location that you want to render this out in. So like CGI in my case, I'll like version 1, put it in here, then call like CG underscore and hit accept and stuff like that. So that's how you put the base path. Now you can see the folder base path is actually showing here. And then we have this image socket. What's nice about the file output node is we can add multiple image sockets. And so now we can like plug multiple things in and actually render multiple things out at once, versus if you wanted to do this with the composite node, you would have to like render this out once, and then you would have to do a whole nother render to render this out and plug that in, right? There's no way to do multiple renders at once. It's just a very nice way of working. I don't know why Blender doesn't have it as default. Let's see, the pro. When I try to zoom in or move in compositing, just zoom the nodes, not the scene. Yeah, so if you, oh, not the background. Is that what you're saying? Because if, yeah, re-enable this. If you're talking about zooming in Blender itself, it's Alt-V is to zoom in, V is to zoom out, and then if you hold Alt and then middle mouse click, you can move around the viewer and stuff. So that's how you navigate that. Hopefully that solves some things, maybe. But yeah, so anyway, we have the file output node. And then depending on what you actually want to render out, I highly recommend you guys figure out like an ACES workflow or just some type of EXR workflow. PNG, what you have to realize with PNG formats and like MOV and stuff like that is that it's going to be different for you. I'm working in ACES, but it automatically bakes in AGX look, right? And so it just bakes in the information. There's not as much information there. What you have to know about EXR sequences. So in my case, I'll do like an EXR multi-layer, set it to float half and then zip to DWAA. Float half is just 16-bit. Rarely will you need 32-bit for most work. DWAA is a lower file size codec, but honestly, me and so many other people don't even notice the difference between DWAA and zip, which is lossless. It just saves a lot of file space and stuff. But anyway, those are settings I was set there. The EXR format is such a better format because it's 16-bit instead of 8-bit, so it's double the amount of bits that it can store. It's in a linear format, and so what that means is in compositing, we want to be in a linear format just to do with a lot of color management and stuff like that. It just, layman's terms, without getting too complex into it, it just it maintains color data more, so we don't have to convert color as much. It keeps everything kind of streamlined throughout the entire process and stuff like that. Again, highly recommend learning Aces. I actually just released a short going over how to download Aces and stuff like that. I'm working on a full kind of tutorial later on of kind of explaining all of the Aces quirks. I'm still learning some things myself, but highly recommend. Let's see. Hey man, just want to say your tutorials have helped me start off using Blender. Looking forward to being a part of the community and creating some great things. Awesome. Thanks so much. I'm glad to help you out. You should totally join the Discord. Again, shameless plug, we have Discord channel in the link in the description below. This is where we're having some community challenges. We have some resource tabs that you guys can chat in. We have general, introduce yourself, where you can brag about yourself, all that. We have off-topic stuff, so if you want to chat about food, I want to see some of the amazing food, some games, tech, very nerdy stuff. I would love to have you guys over there. We're trying to get to 500 members. We're at 433 right now. So, but anyway, coming back to it, we have this file output node. What I would do from here, this is getting more advanced into compositing. So if you want to keep it simple, you can just exit all of these out and just have one image. You can of course name the image whatever you want. Say it's just like, you want to name it like a beauty pass or something like that, right? You can just name it however you want there and plug it in here. But what I highly recommend instead is you guys learn a multi-pass compositing workflow, because then what that allows, if you come over here, you can have all these different passes. So for instance, I'll just enable all of them and kind of just show you all of the options. And then I'll show you kind of the ones I mainly use in my stuff. So we'll go ahead and render out another one. And this is super simple, super simple scene. So it's gonna be pretty easy relatively on what we need to render out. Also, join the Discord today. Welcome. Glad to have you. Also, real quickly, some people were having some issues with the black screen. Just so you know, the black screen is tied to the the compositing node, or whatever it's called, composite. So you can see the composite node up here. If we go to foreground, you can see this is what this is the render layers node, right? So if we come back out of here, this is the image socket of the render layer node. The reason it's black is because we don't have anything plugged into here. You can, if you want to have your sanity, plug this into here. But if, again, the composite node is linked to the output section, our output section is just going to our temporary folder. And so those temporary files I purge all the time. And so just know that if you're seeing a black screen, don't worry, nothing's wrong. If anything, you want to check this file path where you have been saving them. You want to make sure it's saving out the images here instead of your composite node. So don't worry if it's black. It might be a scary thing, but it's totally fine. But anyway, we'll come back down here. We have many different things now. By the way, a quick tip, if you go to edit preferences, I think it's in extensions now or something. Let's see. No, Node Wrangler, there we go. I don't know why I thought it was in extensions, but the Node Wrangler add-on is a must in my opinion. It basically just allows you to have a lot more shortcuts inside of nodes. And so, for example, the biggest one I use all the time is Shift Control and then click a socket. It'll jump the viewer to that socket just so we can quickly view the different sockets. It's just a nice kind of way of working. Anyway, let's go ahead and just quickly explain. I don't want to like dwell too much on this stuff because I want you guys to like figure some of this stuff out. And also I have multiple courses and videos talking about these methods and stuff. So I don't want to beat a dead horse, but we have the main beauty pass. This is just the main kind of render pass. We have the alpha channel. So this is the alpha channel since we have film transparency. Depth pass and mist pass are basically one and the two same things. Mist, you can control the values, and then depth pass, I think depth pass needs to be in 32-bit though. And that basically allows you to have, depth away from camera. It's useful sometimes in compositing, but mostly for advanced stuff. Same with position, normal, and vector and UV. Those passes are really used for like high level compositing. This is useful in compositing if you need to like have 3D information in the scene. This stuff is great to have because you can basically from the 2D layer, you can have 3D data into it, right? It just certain things is very useful for. So these are all kind of the more advanced passes. Index and MA, I don't know some of those, to be honest. The more interesting ones are the diffusion, glossy passes, transmission, volume, emission, environment. These are the main passes of Blender. To explain it to you, I use this graphic all the time. If you search up Blender cycles formula and go to images, there's this great formula that they have on Blender documentation. This combined pass right here is the image pass, right? It is in the industry, we call it the beauty pass, right? This pass right here is the combination of all of these things. You can see we're plussing together the diffusion indirect and the direct, and then multiplying that by the diffusion color. And then we're doing the same exact things to all this stuff. This is kind of how you translate this formula. You plus these two, multiply this. And then at the very end, once you have done all of this stuff, you want to plus all of these separate things in together. And that makes this combined pass, right? So again, this super simple scene. So you're not going to see too many. And honestly, for a scene like this, I wouldn't do too many multi-pass stuff. But as you can see, it's nice to have, like, this is the direct diffusion. So this is the color of our object and directly from the world lighting. The indirect, right? So we have our shadow catcher on the floor and it's bouncing some of that light up onto the bottom of our object right here. So that is the indirect lighting, and then also the color of the object. And so as you can see, the color is just purely white just because it's just going to be a multiplication step. So basically this is 100% diffusion right here, and this is 0% diffusion. So you can think of it like that. Same with gloss and transmission. I can actually, we'll make it a reflective material, just real quick. So metallic up and then roughness down. Again, I don't have any textures on any of the objects or anything, so that's why it's looking weird right now, but just for demonstration purposes, I do want to show you that some of these are actually doing stuff for our scene. So I'll just let that load out a little bit. Let it denoise real quick. Hopefully you guys are learning a thing or two. I know I'm like going super in depth about all this stuff, but it's because it's A, I love to ramble, but also B, it's like understanding this stuff, you can unlock so much with your work. Okay, so let's see. Yeah, so now because we push everything, let me explain this because I didn't realize I'd make it fully black. So because our metallic is all the way up, and then also our roughness is super far down, everything that we see here is basically gloss now because it's reflection. You can think of gloss as reflections. You can think of transmission as transparency. And so if this was like a glass object, we'd have transmission. So that's the reason these are black now. We still have the alpha, or not the alpha. I don't want to say alpha, it's the color, but since we're multiplying that, it's basically a black and white channel. So we have this multiplied, and now you can see since we don't have any diffusion in our scene, it's fully black here. So hopefully that explains it. And now if we go to the gloss, I expect to see more of our color data and stuff into it. There we go. So now you can see the direct gloss. This is literally the world. So this is where you can really get involved. This is the color of our world. If you remember, we set this to that color. On the reflections of the object, this is just reflecting the world. So as you can see here, and then this right here is reflecting objects. So that will be gloss indirect right here. So now you can see we're breaking these two into separate things. And then our color, of course, is just going to be this. And so hopefully that makes a little bit more sense. Transmission is probably going to be 0 since we don't have any transmission. Volume is going to be 0. We don't have any volume in the scene, but if you did, you would follow that. Emission, we don't have any emission. That would be like if an object is glowing or something like that. We don't have our object glowing. Environment, that's going to be the environment of our world. So if you had like an HDRI, you would see that in this scene. Since our world is literally just this color again, it's just this color with the objects cut out of our scene. So super basic there. The one that's really, really nice actually is ambient occlusion. It's a little wonky right now, but ambient occlusion is just the area where like two objects meet. And so we can have like some nice mass to use for compositing to really like make that part pop. I use the ambient occlusion pass all the time in my own workflow. So keep that in mind. Shadow catcher. If you're using a shadow catcher, then this is a nice pass to have. The reason I don't love doing the shadow catcher pass most times is A, it's a black and and white mask instead of having an alpha channel. I wish the shadow catcher had an alpha channel so we could use it straight as a mask. So there's some fancy compositing stuff that we can do. So it's not too big of a deal. You're supposed to multiply this on top of your footage, right? That's kind of the goal, but I don't love working that way. That gets too much into a tangent. Finally, the debug sample count, we don't need that. That's what Blender is doing in the background. Crypto mats, I'll talk about crypto mats and show that in a little bit, but just know that you when you enable this, you can either have a crypto mat object, material, or asset. Most of the times you're going to be using material or object. I have rarely needed asset, but it is there if you need that as well. There's a noisy image, and so this is the image without the noise. So you can see if you for whatever reason need the noisy image version of it, it's there. You know, again, don't know why you would need to use that, but it is there if you need. The noisy shadow catcher, you can see as well, same concept. The denoising normal and the albedo, this is used for denoising. So if you had like a denoise node in here, and I'll show you that in a little bit, you would plug whatever you need denoise. So we'll do like the noisy image and then the normal and the albedo into this socket. And if we view this, we can see this should in theory look pretty much the same as this, minus the, you know, everything else that's, oh no, there we go. So yeah, so these two should be pretty much the exact same, as you can see. The only, this is my gripe with the denoise node, it goes on the CPU, and so it's super slow. I think Blender is actually working on the denoise node and making it better. So in the future updates of Blender, you might have better versions of that. But we'll talk about that in a little bit. But yeah, hopefully that makes sense. Let's go ahead and combine everything. This is going to be a very lame kind of way of combining everything, but we're just going to follow this formula real quick. This, all of this stuff. I'll show how you would set it up, but unfortunately for our stuff, most of the, you need a color mix. There we go. Mix color node. Most of the stuff is going to be black, right? Like we don't have any diffusion. Basically, we don't have any transmission, no volume, emission, or environment. We don't need any of this stuff. It's pretty much just going to be for glossy, right? So there are two ways you can do it. We have the mix color node. We're going to change this to add, right? Because we want to follow this formula. We want to add the direct and indirect diffuse together. So we're going to add those together. And then we're going to duplicate this. I do like to kind of crunch them down. I have my qualms with Blender Compositor. Abstract can tell you all about that. But we have add, and then now we need to multiply. Again, just following the formula. So adding these two and then multiplying this product by this color right here. So multiply, we'll plug this here, the color down here. And there we go. Now we should see it's totally black again because there is no diffusion in any of this stuff. I did not expect to have any black. So honestly, in a case like this, I wouldn't even render this out. This would just be extra data that would be taking file space on our computer. So there's no reason at all to render this out, unless maybe you wanted to use this socket as like a mask for some reason. But you know, I don't know. Personally, I want to render it out. Since all of the main passes, so our diffusion, glossy, and transmission are the exact same formula, what we can do is just click both of these, drag these down, duplicate these, and then just plug these into the same exact sockets, but for each individual pass. So again, the transmission, I don't expect to have anything for. Again, I probably wouldn't render this out, but I'm just showing you the setup in case you want to use it. The gloss is where everything's going to be. So as you can see, this and the noisy image should in theory be the exact same, just minus the alpha channel. So as you can see, yep, it's pretty much the exact same. But yeah, so we have this same with like volume. You would add together the volume nodes. Volume is great to kind of have as well. Same with emission. Now we need to add everything back together. So we'll add some more things here. Again, this is this part of the process, this plus thing. Now that we have combined everything over here, we're just going to plus all of them together. And now the plus operation, I don't believe it matters which way you go, because it's adding, and adding doesn't matter which sockets plug into which. But I just like to make it nice and tidy over here. Just kind of helps my brain kind of organize some things. So we'll plug that into here. Again, most of the stuff is black, so literally the gloss and this is the exact same. But if you did have any transmission, volume, or diffusion, you would have this node set up. So I just want to show that. Same with like if you wanted your environment or emission. Just quickly plug those in as well. This is the basic setup that you would set up to actually render this out. Actually, our environment I'm going to leave out because I set it to transparent, our world to transparent, and so it's basically getting rid of that environment socket. Usually you don't need the environment for VFX, but that's besides the point. But yeah, we will leave it there. The final thing that I want to say, you can either save for like a scene like this, right? So we have all of our combined. I never do combining inside of Blender. Also, the quick reason I would do something like this, I'll just quickly demonstrate it, is like RGB curves. I'll plug into the gloss direct, and then I can, like, you know, make it a little bit lighter or start darker. You know, if the world was too light, I can make it lighter, right? And like blow it up and stuff like that. And now it's only affecting this. And then, you know, say I want to affect just the color as well, I can go ahead and do like a contrast thing, or, you know, it's just a very nice way of working to differently affect things. It makes your shots much more realistic, if you will. But yeah, anyway. So we have all of this stuff. What we want to go ahead and do now is we want to go ahead and render this out. Now, if you're doing your composite in Blender, this is totally fine. You would just plug it into, you know, your file output node or your composite node and stuff like that. But if you didn't want to render this to another program, we would need to go ahead and be smart about rendering this out. So usually what I'll do is if, like, say we had a diffusion thing, and I wanted the diffusion, but I knew I didn't want to combine it in Nuke, right? Like if it was a simple diffusion pass, you could just plug all of these sockets into the image nodes over here, right? But again, that's taking up 3 slots worth of data. And so each time you add a new slot, it's that much more data. And so if I knew that I wasn't going to do anything special to the diffusion pass, I would just plug this multiply straight into the image socket, right? And so now instead of 3 sockets, it's just 1. For the gloss pass, so if I was actually like serious about rendering this shot out, since we have a lot of like different nice data here, I actually do want to separately add this into our scene. So instead of adding it beforehand, we're going to add in compositing. So I'm going to bring some of these out into here, into the color nodes. And now we have 3 sockets, but that gives us flexibility in a program like Nuke or something like that, where we can actually combine these. I'll show you a quick Nuke script in a little bit, going over kind of a similar workflow and stuff. Same with transmission over here. We don't... Theoretically, this is totally black, so I'm not going to even like render it out. Same with the diffusion. We don't even need to render the diffusion out because it's totally black. It's literally 0 data. If we add it in, all it's going to be doing is taking up space and nothing else. This is where you want to decide which passes you want to render out. I always like to have the alpha pass in case we do need an alpha channel for any reason to pre-multiply or add an alpha channel into the stream. You can go down some of these passes. Ambient occlusion I always add, so AO pass. You can also name them over here. So like this is alpha. I'll name this one AO. This is the gloss. You can name it however you want, but I just name it whatever this is over here. So gloss dir, gloss ender, and then gloss color. There we go. So yeah, so that's just how you name them over here. It'll save since we're saving in a multi-layer, it'll actually save these as the layer names, and then whatever we have as a name up here, it'll save it as the file name. And so that's how that works. Now Cryptomat's a fun one. Unfortunately, it's not going to be super difficult, super unique for this one. We can add a Cryptomat node in Blender and plug the image into the image socket down here. And if we view that, we can see that, oh, why are we not seeing our image? There we go. We'll go to pick. So as you can see right now, we have crypto object selected. You can select the asset or material. It's really up to you on which one you need to select, but all you can see is it's a way to get out quick mask inside of Blender. Is this music like blaring? Yeah, it's kind of loud. But anyway, all it is we'll go to pick, and if you hit this plus icon, you can select cube, and we have ground. We basically just have 2 objects. Super simple scene right here. But if we click this, now if we go to the matte, it has basically given us a alpha matte, and it should be the same alpha as our alpha channel. So as you can see, we got a quick matte. Say I want the opposite. Say I want to select, unselect the cube. So we just minus and pick select that. We'll plus and then add the ground. And so now in the matte section, we have the alpha for the ground. And so it's just a nice way to get quick mattes. Now, the one thing about crypto mattes, if you want to render it out, I usually make a new file output section down here. And what you need to do is you need to be EXR multi-layer float. You want to set to full. And then I believe you can maybe do DWA or zip or something. I can't remember exactly if it matters with this, but the thing that does matter is float full. Basically, these files need to be 32-bit, and if it's set to half, it's 16-bit and won't work as well. So just keep that in mind. An amazing person on the Discord actually let me know about that, and so join the Discord. I can't stress enough. I won't. Some of you guys joining, I appreciate that. Go say hello, introduce yourself, say hi in general. I'd love to see some of your guys' work. See, no feedback yet, so. But yeah, anyway, you would just plug all of these objects. I don't understand why they're into like CryptoMatte 00, 01, 02, all that. I just know that you need all of this stuff. And then usually I just name it the exact same. So we'll do like crypto object 00. We'll copy that. This one will be 01. This one will be 02 and so on. You know, you can do it for the material and the asset. I believe the asset is like, if you have an object and it has many different objects assigned to it, like parented or something, it actually assigns that, you know. So we'll come to pick and we'll go to the asset now. And yeah, it's the exact same thing. They're two separate objects, so it didn't really matter there. But yeah, so that's CryptoMatte explained. That's how you render it out if you want to use it in Nuke or anything like that. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Let me just show you a quick kind of thing in Nuke, and I think we'll be done with this stream. Hopefully the camera tracking is helping out some of you guys who are struggling with camera tracking. There's also Synthize. Synthize is a great tool. Unfortunately, I don't think I have it activated on my machine because I have a two machine setup, and I don't have the license on this machine yet. But yeah, that's a much better way of working. We'll go here. Let's try to see one of my previous things. Let's see this. I don't think the files are going to be linked correctly. We'll see. I'm not going to explain everything I'm doing because a lot of this stuff is renders. Don't worry about what I'm doing. There we go. All right, anyway. What is this? Okay, so anyway, we have this scene right here. And this scene, if I go and disable everything, you can see this is what it looked like straight out of Blender. You know, so, you know, still not bad. The lighting's like decent, but like with multipass compositing, you can see this is not denoise and stuff. Don't have the node on my machine for the denoise node, but as you can see, it's like a lot more detailed and the reflection and stuff like that. And up here, you can see if I go inside of here, this is just the Nuke way of doing things. It's pretty much the same concepts for other compositors. The layer contact sheet, you can see all of the layers we have. And so here are all the layers that I had rendered out of the Blender project. So you might be able to recognize some of them. So we have ambient occlusion, we have diffusion, direct, indirect, color, gloss, indirect, and color for the gloss as well. Emission is just these little bits down here. So there were like a little, like some lights on the actual object. This is the albedo, the alpha, and then normal. And so this, I was trying to test some things with denoising. It didn't actually end up working. And the alpha channel is red. I don't know exactly why that is. I think it's just a data thing to keep data low. Instead of rendering out an RGB channel, it just renders out one single channel, and Nuke reads that in as red. But anyway, as you can see, here is the multi-pass workflow. You might be able to recognize some of the stuff. It's the exact same process. We have the diffusion direct and the diffusion indirect, so both of those, and we're plussing those together. So we're plussing those and then multiplying it by the color. And so this is the exact same thing that we're doing inside of Blender. You can see the steps that we're getting to achieve that look, right? And then the same thing for the gloss. The gloss was really, really powerful for this shot. You can see the difference that it made. So we have the gloss direct, the indirect, and then the color, and then the combined, right? So like it just, multipass compositing, if you guys can learn, it's such a powerful method to get good looking shots. You know, you can see having these two separated just allows so much more flexibility in the compositing stage. See, Mr. Bobucks. Hey, Jacob, you inspired me to start doing VFX, and I really love your camera track videos. I made some shots with your tutorials. I want to show you them. I'm only 13 and wanted tips. Welcome, welcome. You should totally join the Discord. We have a lot of tips and tricks, some resources, and some other stuff. Shameless plug again. But yeah, go ahead and join the Discord. We have a lot of cool stuff, and I'd love to meet some of you guys over there. So thanks for the feedback. Thanks for the nice. Makes me feel good. But yeah, so we're again just plussing it. It's again this is this exact formula just inside of Nuke, right? So you can either do it inside of Blender or do it inside of Nuke. And I decided to do it inside of Nuke. Again, I don't have the transmission because this had no like glass or any transmission emissive materials, and so why render out something that you're not going to use, right? And so as you can see, we're slowly just working our way up to get a good result. Love this little thing, this gizmo. Great kind of lens bloom and stuff. Anyway, I can gush all day about Nuke, but hopefully that explains a little bit more of some of your stuff. But yeah, guys, I think that's pretty much going to do it. If any of you guys are on stream right now that have work, please comment right now because I can wait a little bit if you want feedback on the challenge. Again, this shot, if you want to join the challenge, we have some cool prizes up for grabs. Shout out to, let's go to it. Shout out to FlaxFlow over here. Been working with Axel, and it's a really cool add-on. I am wanting to get into it more. It's basically automatic camera tracking and like data, so it'll be super nice to get like really solid data into it for a shot like we're doing in the actual scene like this. It would be able to model out this scene really, really nicely. It's basically, from my understanding of it, you click on a point, and based on its calculations for the camera lens and stuff like that, you can actually like model out this wall super accurately, like click and get out perfect geometry inside of Blender super fast and easy. So really, really cool add-on. So definitely go ahead and check that out. I will post the link right now to the stream. If you guys want to check it out, go ahead and say Jacob sent you. It's now Super Hive, which is crazy. Blender Market being Super Hive, but I understand you can't go by Blender Market, so I'm even surprised honestly that they can say formerly Blender Market right there. But anyway, that's besides the point. It gets into the drama of Blender Market and all that stuff. I don't want to get into that. But yeah, no, I think that's pretty much it. Hopefully, I think the biggest thing you guys were having trouble with was the camera tracking. So hopefully we were able to solve that for most of you guys. I have this shot. Let me see where that would be, because I actually have done this shot before. Let's go like here. Let's go to portfolio. Sorry, I'm in the process of like organizing all my my stuff. So here's the shot that I made with this shot. This was a while back ago. I even added some like lens effects like defocusing and stuff like that. But yeah, the idea is we just want to get a cool like world, CG world. This is actually a cool shot. This was one of the first ones I kind of used a new method for some VFX on, so it's kind of a cool process. But yeah, if you want to win some sick prizes that are up from grabs, my free green screen or my green screen course for the top the winner of the thing gets this free visual effects course, which has like 15 hours of content, 33 chapters, or 9 chapters, 33 lessons, stuff like that. So that is also up for grabs as well. So you can check that out. But yeah, guys, I think that's pretty much it for what we're going to be doing today. I am going to be doing some more of these throughout this next week, just to kind of help you guys along. But yeah, but the Discord link is invalid. It shouldn't be. It should. Some people say that. So I wonder if it's country based or something. But it should work. I've tried it multiple times, and every single time that people say it doesn't work, it works for me. But yeah, so it looks like that is working. But if you yeah, I don't I don't know what to say. I would maybe check on your end to see. I'm going to start working on the challenge project today. Still thinking on the yes, join. We need all the people as possible. I'd love to see you guys work. Again, we have a full challenge section on the Discord. If you want, you know, to share your progress, chat with other challengers and stuff like that. This is the first of many. Still working out the kinks and stuff like that, but it's a fun time to have, and also a way for you guys to win some awesome stuff. But anyways, guys, it looks like that is going to do it for this stream. Thanks so much again for hopping on by. Join the challenge in the Discord down below. Thanks everybody for watching, and I will see you guys later. Peace.